script. So here we go. I did have to make one change though. So welcome everyone, and thanks so much for joining us today. Senator Larry Taylor is a native Texas, raised in Friendswood, and a Baylor University graduate. His beautiful wife and college sweetheart, Carrie, have 3 adult children, and I just corrected this, 3 grandchildren, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Senator Taylor formerly owned Truman Taylor Insurance Agency, which merged with Galveston Insurance Associates after Hurricane Harvey. Before his election to the Texas Senate in 2012, he served 5 terms in the Texas House of Representatives. Currently, Senator Taylor serves as chairman of the Senate Committee on Education and as a member of the following committees: Higher Education, Water and Rural Affairs, and the Budget Writing Finance Committee. He also serves as a member of the Legislative Budget Board, a permanent joint committee responsible for developing budget and policy recommendations for legislative appropriations. Our senator is quite busy. In the 86th legislative session, Senator Taylor sponsored House Bill 3, a comprehensive overhaul of school finance system, and authored Senate Bill 11, School Safety Bill. He was also a member of the State Budget Conference Committee, a select group of only 10 legislators chosen to make budget decisions before the bill is voted on by the entire legislature. Senator Taylor represents Senate District 11, comprised of portions of Brazoria, Galveston, and Harris counties. Thank you, my friend, for all you do. And we thank you for, you're just so responsive. I text him, call him. I know most of the people that are on here are great friends of yours too, and we just couldn't thank you enough for all that you do and all that you give to Texas and our region. So I'll turn it over to you. As you're on the lawn. As you're on the lawn. Oh, God. I said as you're on the lawn of the Capitol.
I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you guys. It's nice to see you. Looking forward to seeing y'all live and in person here soon, I hope. I think we're getting closer and closer to being able to have more of these types of events. I think I had my first luncheon on Friday of this week in a restaurant. So it's been a while.
Yeah.
I've certainly learned a lot during COVID. I think like 99% of us, I never heard of Zoom before COVID, and now I'm on Zoom every day, multiple times a day. So it's certainly been a learning curve. These are certainly interesting times we live in. I thought I'd start off by telling us a little bit about where we are, both in Texas and Galveston County, and then give you a little bit of the flavor of the state budget as we're going through this. Talk about education, which, as you know, I work a lot in, and then finish up with property tax. And I think we have some time there at the end. Hopefully this won't take me too long, but I've got a lot to talk about. There's a lot of stuff going on.
We're here. So.
But where we are, you know, Texas, we've done lots and lots of additional testing now. So you'll hear the media report how many cases there are, but you know, we're testing about 25,000 people a week now. So obviously the number of cases is going to go up somewhat correspondingly. And we've now tested over 970,000 people in Texas, and with 64,880 positive tests out of that whole period of time we've been doing this. That's about a 6.6 positivity rate for the whole period of time we've been doing this. But we look more, as far as trends, it's very much more important to look at like 7-day averages. And this last week, the 7-day average was 5.44%. So you see the trend overall is coming down. Give that a little bit of perspective. April the 13th, our 7-day average was 13.86%. So that 5%, we've been hovering right around 5% here now for the last few times I've seen these numbers, 7-day averages. So we're doing well, and that's even with the, you know, we had the first phase of opening, and we've had the second phase of opening. So those are encouraging. I'm told that those numbers, those positivity rates get back around 10%. We'll need to go back and make some kind of adjustment. So it's good news that they're staying where they are. Our current number of people in Texas in the hospital is about 1,756 for the whole state. So we've done a good job there. And unfortunately, we've had 1,678 fatalities in the entire state of Texas. But I think but it's important to put that in perspective. I think about half of those have been in nursing homes and memory care facilities. and out of 28, 29 million people,
Right.
we've been very fortunate. Texas is doing better relatively to other states. And there's no place I'd rather be during COVID than in Texas,
Right.
and frankly, to be here in our area because we're doing well here. When I gave you those numbers, how many people in the hospital in Texas? That's 1,700. We have available hospital beds of 16,000. So if you remember, the flattening the curve was to make sure we kept our hospital spaces available. We have over 1,784 ICU beds and 5,800 ventilators. So we are well prepared for an uptick or whatever. But we're monitoring. I think the governor's doing an admirable job. This is a very difficult time. You have people on both spectrums. You have some who think we should not leave our homes until COVID is completely vanquished. And then you have some that say we should just go wide open and act like COVID's not even here. So, and the governor's trying to strike that balance
Right.
to get our economy going. We've got to get people to buy in. So I think the idea of phasing it in, for those who are in fear, the idea they can see more and more people out and about and those numbers not going up, hopefully that'll give them some courage to join up. And of course, we still need to take care of those who are most at risk, elderly, those with comorbidities, those type of things. So we need to be responsible for those people. And be careful, but I think we're doing this in a measured way and trying to help build confidence among everybody. As far as Galveston County goes, we've done about 33,500 tests now in Galveston County. We've had 807 positive tests. That's a 2.4% positivity rate. So I think our coastal climate, maybe that's good for us, but we seem to be doing better there. We've had 37 fatalities, as you know. A number of those have also been in our nursing homes here in Galveston County. But our 7-day average in Galveston County on testing is 1.9%. So we're doing well. Keep up the great work out there. We've got to get this economy going, but those kind of numbers should encourage people to get back out there. Leads it into the budget discussion. Last session was about education, and there was talk this session about whether or not it'd be about higher education, making some reforms and things there. But there was also redistricting. At the end of every decade, we have a census, as you know, is going on right now. And normally we would get those census numbers in the middle of this coming session. They would be having hearings right now leading up to that, and then a lot of the time during the session will be taken up by redistricting. That's where we get to see our congressmen come down from D.C. for the first time. We see them in 10 years. They always come during redistricting, see how we're doing, just checking up on us. But now the Census Bureau has told us that those numbers are not even going to be available until after the session is over. So we'll probably be coming in special session next summer to work on redistricting. And of course, with all that's gone on between COVID, with oil and gas plummeting the way it's done, we're kind of getting a double whammy here in Texas. So it's going to probably move towards more like a budget session, and I'll get to that in a second. But just to give you a flavor of where we are in Texas, for the week ending May 16th, 134,000 Texans filed for unemployment relief. That's 1 week. That's 1,000% increase over any week in 2019. In fact, in just a 7-week span during March and April, 1.8 million Texans applied for unemployment, more than all of 2019 combined. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a perspective on how hard this has hit our area. Our state. Our state unemployment rate in April was 12.8%. It was 4.7% in March. That's a humongous jump. The record before was 9.2% unemployment in 1986. So to give you some idea of the actual numbers, the impact on the state budget so far, in April, Texas collected $2.6 billion in sales tax revenues, which is down about 9% from April the year before. May, they collected $2.61, which is down 13% from May of 2019. So you can see those numbers, and you have to remember that sales taxes is about 60% of our revenues of the state. So those numbers are significant. Hopefully we get that economy going back again here fairly soon. And then on top of that, the oil and natural gas industry paid a total of $16.3 billion in local taxes and state royalties in 19. $16 billion last year. And of the $59 billion in tax revenue the state collected, oil and gas represents about 10%. One of every $10 comes from oil and gas. So you can see we're having the double hit going there. So we're moving into the next session. Starts January of 21, and I've now experienced 3 of these budget sessions. My very first session, I was in Austin. We had a budget session. It was 2003, and we had a $10 billion budget shortfall. And we did like what we're supposed to do. We're required by the Constitution to have a balanced budget. This comptroller gives us a revenue estimate, and that's how much we had to spend. And those numbers were way down. So we had to make significant cuts in 2010. And we didn't raise taxes, which is the worst thing you do when your economy is already down, is to increase taxes on people who are already struggling. So we did not do that. And we came back the next session and had a budget surplus. Had another, you remember the economic collapse of 2008 when the real estate market went in the tank. The federal government came in with a lot of federal money. So our session in 2009 was not bad. But you remember that slow economic recovery, we still had not recovered by the time we came back in session in 2011. So that's when the real significant shortfalls hit us. And that time we had a $17 billion shortfall. We did the same thing. We reduced spending. In fact, that was the first time in probably since the Depression we'd ever reduced funding for our schools. I think it's important for folks to realize that our #1 budget item in general revenue for the state of Texas is public education and higher education. So that's a huge part of our budget. When you're facing a $17 billion shortfall, you obviously can't settle that on the backs of less than half of the budget. So we did have that shortfall. And now coming into 2021, the unknowns outnumber the knowns at this point. We know we're getting federal money, and I'll talk a little bit about that here in a little bit. But we don't know if there's going to be more money coming or if that's going to be it. We also have a rainy day fund, our economic stabilization fund, commonly called the rainy day fund. We have the largest rainy day fund in the country except for Alaska. Our rainy day fund balance is larger than 48 other states combined. So we have that in our favor. And I've got to say something about that rainy day fund, because every session I've been there, people talk about we ought to be spending that money. But we've always been very conservative in how we use that money. It was used for one-time expenses, not for continuing expenses. Yes. That's what you should be doing with your budget. But like Harvey, we spent a significant amount of dollars out of the rainy day fund last session to help get through Harvey. But thank goodness we've done that, because that rainy day fund is for times such as this. So it'll help us get through and smooth out some of these really rough patches we're going through. So federal money, rainy day fund, and then we don't know the revenue estimates yet. Now, I would not want to have the comptroller's job right now. I think many of you have met Glenn Hager. I think he's been up to speak to our group. We're in a 2-year budget. We passed a bill, our budget bill last session in 2019. That budget started September 1st of 2019. So we're still in the first year of our 2-year budget. When we go back in session that starts in January and ends in May, hopefully, we're creating a budget for almost 2.5 years out from then. Imagine having the job of trying to estimate what the revenue is going to look like in the next 2 years, in the times that we're in and all that. But he's going to come out with a revised budget estimate middle of July, which will give us a little bit better idea where we are. I've already given you some perspective on that. And then we'll get our final revenue estimate right before we go into session. And that's how much money we have to spend. And we generally don't spend everything that he tells us, because you've got to be conservative on top of that, because if you have shortfalls, that's when you end up coming back in special sessions, that kind of thing. So you get an idea. We've got a challenging budget coming up, but we have some things in place that give us hope that we will get through this. And I know we'll get through it. I mean, we've done it before, and these are humongous challenges, but this is what we do. This is what Texas is all about. It's in our DNA. If you go back to our history is facing challenges and overcoming them. From taking on another country to become our own country, to putting man on the moon, to surviving hurricanes and biblical floods. I mean, this is what we do. We roll up our sleeves, get to work. What do we need to do? And just get it done. So I have every confidence we're going to get that done. As far as education funding, there's a lot of federal money coming in. FEMA is providing some money to help pay for cleanup, janitorial type things in our schools. The USDA is providing money for our school lunch programs, because those were expanded they expanded the eligibility, and they allowed more people to access those. So there's been money available for that. It's interesting. They provided more funds of the actual meal services has gone down during this period of time. So, and then we've got the Every Student Succeeds Act, which was already planned to give us an additional 100 million next year. So that's going to be coming in. We have money coming in through the TEA, about 1.3 billion that was moved directly to schools. And that's going to be allowed to actually supplant state funding. So that will help us replace funding that we would have given to federal, given to public schools is going to be paid by the feds. And we're going to use a lot of that money to help us on our distance learning, which I'm going to get into in a little bit, as far as how to expand our connectivity for our students.
And do you see a lot of that? I mean, I know you're going to talk about that.
Yeah. To me, that's the silver lining in all of what's happened here. You know, we've been talking about moving into getting into more 21st century technology, using the capabilities that we have. You know, I've said for years, you know, a textbook now, average textbook is $80 to $90 per textbook. Mm-hmm. And for the price of 2 or 3 textbooks, we could get devices in these kids' hands, and they can have the whole library. They can have the whole world, and they can have much richer educational materials in a textbook written on a page, however many years ago it was. In these days and times, it's already old by the time it was written. But it can be updated and kept up to speed. And the you know, used to have the diagrams 1, 2, and 3, you know, showing you a process. Now you can click on it, and excuse me, it'll show you that process in live and in color. And
yeah,
you can do dissections online without the smell. I mean, it's just amazing things we have forward. So, and we've been trying to get, you know, education moved into the 21st century, and some have really embraced it, and I'm so happy to have that. But in about 2 weeks, every school district in the state had to move to distance learning. Think about that. They were on spring break, a lot of them. They had been doing traditional classroom learning, teachers with kids in seats, and all of a sudden, no, we're not coming back, so we're flipping over to, you're going to do this at home. Very challenging. I've got to give it to our local schools and the Texas Education Agency for stepping up in the way they did to be able to keep some education still going forward. And what we're finding is a lot of these, some of these kids have done better in that environment than they do in a traditional classroom. But on the other end, you've got kids who are totally missing out. The school districts call them into the wind. These kids have disappeared since they're not showing up every day. And now they're literally going out to their homes and trying to locate these kids to find out where they are, because they haven't responded to the assignments or any of those. They try to deliver devices to ones that didn't have them. But that's been our real challenge on this thing, is connectivity. But let me just say real quick on education. Our goal, and TEA's Commissioner Mike Morath has stated that our goals for this COVID is to make sure that we don't let a health crisis become a multi-year generational educational problem. So these kids, particularly the early ages, these are very important years of their educational attainment in the years to come, particularly learning to read at the 3rd grade level by the end of 3rd grade. That's such an important determiner of how well you do from that point on. Because up to 3rd grade, you're learning to read, and from the 3rd grade on, you're reading to learn. So this is something we've got to make sure we don't let these kids fall behind. Now, we also want to make sure that our local districts are prevented from facing financial hardships during the COVID. And I've already talked about some of the money that's flowing in, some of the governor's money we're going to be putting into public education, particularly directed toward connectivity. And then also looking at the same time to look for where we can find efficiencies and ways to save money to reduce the budget deficits we may be facing next year. So there's a lot going on. You're right now, normally we would be having interim committee hearings in the legislature. You know, we have a session every other year. It's not like we don't work in the meanwhile. In the interim, we have a lot of hearings and discuss things that we passed last session, see how they're going, if there's any change we need, and also preparing for next session if there's something we need to be working on. Obviously, we've got some things now to look at that we weren't anticipating at the end of last session. But with the Capitol closed, we can't have committee hearings. So Lieutenant Governor has appointed working groups. And I've been appointed to a working group. I'm facilitating a working group.
Yes.
It's myself and 5 other members, 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, and we're working on public education and higher education. You know, what does it look like? When do we start? Those kind of things. so we're having informal discussions. We had the commissioner on the Zoom call with us last week, kind of giving us some insights where we were on that in the budget, kind of give us some feel where we need to be helping. And we've reached out. We've done a questionnaire to all of our local districts as well as statewide. We're reaching out to the higher education, community college, as well as universities to see where we can help, where we're getting in the way, with current laws that we have that might be preventing them from doing some of the things they need to do. So we're looking at those kind of things. As far as public school, I know a lot of people want to know when we're going to start. I think we're starting to hear a little bit of consensus. We're going to start about mid-August.
Mid-August.
I think that's highly likely. Now, what it looks like is still up in the air. There's three different possibilities. One, you go back to traditional classrooms mid-August. I think that's probably unlikely because you're going to have some parents, for whatever reason, they may legitimately have health issues at home. They can't afford to have their kid bring it home. So we're probably, and then the other one is we have all distance learning. I think that's probably unlikely. I think you could have some kind of a hybrid, whether it's splitting the day in half and have some of the kids come half the day and do distance learning the other half, or it's even days where some kids come on some days and other kids come on other days, and supplement that with some good distance learning. If you do that right, for most kids, you could do a pretty good job, but some of those kids really need that face-to-face. And we don't know, some of these kids' home life, where they're coming from, it's not conducive to learning. And we need to make sure we get those kids. So maybe that you have those kids in the classroom and have some of the kids that are doing well with the distance learning, let them continue doing that with more sporadic face-to-face. But I think the face-to-face is very important. But we've got to continue moving forward with education. We cannot afford to let this hold a generation back from their opportunities. So,
Senator, who will make those ultimate decisions? That's the
local districts. Now, the state will probably be making some suggestions on how best to do that. But we're leaving that right now to the local districts, trying to give them some guidance on that. But, the conditions are totally different. We have some counties don't have any cases at all. And we have some that have a whole lot. So, I don't say a whole lot. Their percentage is higher. But we do have some hot spots. We now have about 3 hot spots in Texas. We sent groups in there to work on. One of them is like north of Amarillo, and at a meat packing area. And these people have spread into that area. The other hot spots we have is nursing homes in general, and then the CDC, the prisons. So, not CDC, I'm sorry, TDCJ.
What's wrong with the CDC?
Yeah, well, CDC may have some problems with them. That's a whole nother issue.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you look at the education reform we've been working on for a while, we've been trying to close the gaps. Our low-income students do not perform and do not get the same, in my view, educational opportunities in a lot of cases as their peers who come from more well-to-do areas. And we've been trying to close those gaps because that's significant. I think you've heard me talk about this. As our demographics change, the lower income kids is now the larger population than those who have more resources. So if we don't close that gap, Texas very soon will be underwater and not be the same state we are today. So we've got to close those gaps. And what this COVID has shown us with all this distance learning and that is now we have a new gap, and it's called connectivity. Like I said, some of our schools were already doing one-to-one devices. They were much better prepared to move into this distance learning environment. Others had not moved at all. And we've been trying to encourage them. In fact, we've had things, we've had a textbook allotment for years in the state funding, in the budget for schools. And we changed that a number of years to instructional materials allotment to try to allow, hey, let's get some technology in here. Quit buying textbooks. Literally, schools in cases will have a whole storage closet full of textbooks. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure why they buy them and why they store them, but those textbooks should be buying devices. So anyway, we changed it to instructional materials allotment. And then last session, because they still weren't doing, a lot of schools still weren't using that money that way, we changed it to technology instructional materials allotment. And we put a budget right that says you have to spend 25% of this money on technology. So these were things we were doing, not knowing we were getting ready for COVID, but we did them to get ready for it. Another thing we did, in the session past, we appropriated $25 million of state funds to match up with a $225 million federal grant called E-rate. And the point of that grant was to make sure that every school in Texas has access to broadband. You can't do any of this if you don't have broadband. Now, I got to give it to our schools. They were very innovative. you know, what they would do in a lot of cases, they would set up a Wi-Fi in the parking lot. So kids, if they didn't have it at home, could come to the parking lot. In many cases, in low-income areas, they'd find an apartment complex for a lot of kids where they put a bus in the parking lot of the apartment, and they put Wi-Fi for those kids. So they're getting, very innovative, and I applaud what they did. But we've got to have every campus. So with that E-rate that we did, currently we have 98.3% of our campuses have access to broadband.
Good.
But the gap is still connectivity at home. So we're working on a number of things. In fact, I was appointed to another statewide group by the governor, working with TA and others and business people. It's called Operation Connectivity. And it's getting 100% of our students connected with Wi-Fi at home and a device, one-to-one devices. Right now, data tells we have about 1 out of 3 students live in homes without high-speed internet or no device at all. So obviously, we can't continue moving forward, one, just to even get through COVID, but just moving forward in the future to take advantage of the opportunities that provides us. We've got to take care of that. So we're working on that with a group.
So do you start that initiative then? And I've heard you talk about this for several years, by the way. I remember when you started talking about it.
I've been pushing this a long time. COVID has really helped.
Yeah. So does that start then at the school level? You know, I sat on the Ed Foundation board for many years, and we spent a lot of money on those sorts of devices, but it starts at the school and identifying the kids and the homes, and then what? We get the funding to do that and make sure that they're home and that, you know, that they have the Wi-Fi capabilities at every home.
Right. That's exactly right. And you can buy, AT&T has come out with plans like $10 a month.
Right.
What we're spending per student in Texas, we can afford, and frankly, if you bought it for the whole state, you'd probably get even a better rate than that. We can get Wi-Fi hotspots in these homes. Once we have the broadband in that area, there's areas, Texas is such a large state, there's areas we're still covered. That's why we have 98.3%. Yeah. But we need to get that there, and we can provide that capability to students, particularly low income. We already provide. In fact, last session we increased the funding for compensatory education, which is what we give for our low income students. We've increased that significantly. These are the kind of things that you can use that money on to make sure these kids are not left behind. And so some of it's using money we're already sending you, like the textbook allotment, change the instructional materials, quit buying textbooks.
Right.
I won't say all textbooks, but don't buy some of them and put them in a storage closet. There's no need for that anymore. Let's buy what we need. In some cases, you need text. Maybe the younger grades, particularly, they need a little book. Mm-hmm. I get that. But we can find ways within the money we've already allocated through House Bill 3 and other ways that we can get this done. And there's also additional money coming to feds that we're specifically putting towards connectivity. So we're going to help get that done, but we've got to make sure we have 100% of our students on that. And then, so the last thing I was going to talk about was property taxes. And I think we've probably already talked about, you've heard this and read the paper. The governor's not going to roll back to 2019 taxes. His quote is, rolling back to 2019 appraisal rates, appraisals does not cut anybody's tax bill. There's the other half of that equation is the tax rate. So the appraisals are out there, the local taxing entities, and I think I've seen pretty encouraging signs from our local entities. They're not going to take advantage of that appraisal increase. They are going to lower their rates. Realizing particularly those appraisals came out as of January 1st. It was a totally different world January 1st. What the citizens of this area are living in now is totally different where they were January 1st. And I think the local taxing jurisdictions will recognize that and lower those rates accordingly to make sure that people don't get an increase in their tax bills. I guess that's about it.
No, I'll just say thank you for that, and hopefully you understand. We did send a letter requesting some sort of reform, and I know you understand because you're a businessman, and every day when if we send a survey out or whatever, the number one concern is our folks' ability to continue to do business. And it just seems like they've been hit by so much, and it's like an increase in taxes might just be one thing that puts them out of it, the next thing. And as I watch this hurricane, maybe, or this tropical storm enter off, can't even think about that. And so that's the thing is if there's just any relief, you know, out there for some time while these businesses can get
Can
back.
I say one thing about that? A
That's
couple things, actually.
yeah.
What we did last session was already making great strides towards lowering people's tax bills. We hear from people. Now, you realize the state doesn't get property taxes. That's done by the local jurisdictions except for schools.
Right.
In the case of schools, the state doesn't get property taxes, but it's a shared responsibility between the state and the local school district in funding education. So here's where I use my cup. Have y'all seen this cup example? This is school finance. So whatever you raise in local property taxes, well, first of all, this cup is how much your district should get based on the number of students you have, the types of students you have, based on all the formulas. Here's how much you get. However much you can raise in local taxes, the state makes up the difference. And what we found out during the School Finance Commission last summer, or yes, summer before last, yeah, was this kept growing and the state share was shrinking. We weren't too far away from the state almost paying nothing. And that's not acceptable. So what we did last session, we put substantial dollars into this. Two things. We put money in to initially, right off the bat, lower your school property taxes by about, on average, 8 cents statewide. Now, some districts are more than that. Some in Galveston County are more than 8 cents. But we initially lowered that 8 cents. And this second year is an additional average of 5 cents. So we literally cut your school property tax. Now we know over time, if you don't do something about appraisals, that savings is gonna be eaten up again by appraisal. So here's the thing we did for schools. Back to my cup.
Yep.
Local taxes. Now we put a cap on how much your local taxes can go up. It can only go up 2.5%. So the state is going to make up that difference. So you'll no longer see an increase like you've seen in the past with those appraisals going. Now, on the other taxing entities, or the state doesn't have a share in, cities, counties, drainage districts, those types of things, we put a cap in there for cities and counties of 3.5%. Now they could raise on average no more than 3.5%. If they need to go over 3.5%, they still can. They just have to explain to the voters why they need that money, and they have to go for a vote. And of course, we exempted the very small towns because in some cases the cost of the election was more than they'd raise in additional money. So we put some parameters around it, but primarily we try to reduce the increases in your local taxes to no more than 3.5% for that. Now, community colleges are not part of that, but they still all have local boards, and they're all making local decisions. And property taxes really is right in the control of the local taxpayer and the voters. They just need to be more participatory in what's going on, watching it, and asking those tough questions. And many times cities need that money, or counties need it, but they need to be explained why they're raising those tax bills.
It's just a difficult time right now.
Oh, it's extremely challenging. Not only do that, now we're looking at a hurricane.
Oh.
And we have the civil unrest going on. I mean, I understand we had retail stores opening up, and now they're closing up again. So this is unbelievable.
I had a chamber that had sent a message to us, and their chamber had been threatened to be burned down, and they were taking their little personal pictures out of their families and things like that because they were rioting at a local police station or whatever. And she said, it just saddens me. None of us ever thought that we would see this.
You know, this is a terrible thing. We have people who are out there legitimately expressing their opinions and at the unjustness of the death of Mr. Floyd. And then we have people who are just joining in and just causing mayhem who have nothing to do with what started all this. And that's just, you know, I watched the video a couple times at least. It's horrifying.
Horrific.
And I understand the people protesting. We certainly have a lot of really good cops, and there's some bad ones, just like there's bad in everything. We have great doctors. We got a couple bad doctors. That's the way it is. But you got to take out the bad ones. I get that. But what's going on right now is just so destructive, and it has nothing to do. For some of these people, they've gone beyond. Well, they're not even. These aren't the legitimate protests. These are just rabble rousers and troublemakers.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what their point is, but I think we've been fairly good here in Galveston County. Hope we can continue that.
Well, if I'm going to keep checking if anyone, now's your time. If you've got a quick question for Senator Taylor, go ahead and type that out now. And then Senator Taylor, what can we do for you? What's one of the things, I mean, we have such a close relationship with you, all of the chambers do in this county, and we appreciate that. But what's one of the things that's important to you that you feel like this chamber needs to get behind and help you with the work
Well, the chamber doing what the chamber does. Work with your local business people to get those people open and help build confidence in the economy so people can get back out there, that they're not, those who, we still have those who are at risk. We need to take care of them, but for the vast majority of people, they need to get back out there. And so what you're doing, I see your Facebook lives and those kind of, we need to get people out there. And if we need to take measures, I heard someone say the other day, if there's people who want to open up the economy, and then I've heard that wearing a face mask might help, significantly in that area. But people don't want to wear the face mask, but they want to get the economy on. So maybe some give in there on that.
Well, we're hearing everything from cancel every event and don't come back to work until there's a vaccine.
Well,
what I explained in a meeting the other day, we want to do things safely. We want people to be safe. We don't want any deaths. When I go and do the videos, we're very safe. But the fact is we're a chamber of commerce. This is when we help people, like I had said, get back into that boat, survival. Although we've not had any help, as a chamber, we didn't qualify for any funding, any money. But the thing is we have to keep moving forward. We have to get people hope. And if we wait for a vaccine, not only will the business community go under, this 175-year-old chamber will go under, and many, many chambers across the nation that promote and advocate for, but we can't make it without events and without those meetings and things like that. So what do you say to those people, leaders in the community? These are leaders.
That's one of my frustrations during this time. When this first started, I certainly understand, the numbers we were told and we were talking about flattening the curve, trying to preserve our healthcare system. So we're not overwhelmed. We didn't want people dying outside of healthcare because they couldn't get in.
Right.
And from what we were told, those were all very legitimate. But we're now, 2.5 months into this? We have a lot more data. We have a lot more information. So I guess what frustrates me is people who still act like it's day one. Mm-hmm. And really moving the goalposts. If you talk about that, remember the flattening curve was about our healthcare system. Well, our healthcare system statewide went from an occupancy of about 85% to about 50% during a healthcare crisis, which doesn't even make sense. But they shut down, to try to be cautious, make sure we had enough room for the COVID patients. We shut down all the elective surgery, which include a lot of things you and I probably wouldn't consider elective. But now we're into this, and we're getting a better feel for the numbers. We're doing it in a responsible manner. We're opening up at a measured pace. We can't keep acting like we don't, have any idea what this is going to look like. The idea of a vaccine doesn't work all the time, especially if it's something that keeps mutating. We know that from the flu every year. So that's an unrealistic goal to say we have a vaccine, then it's okay to open. We've got to be able to move quicker than that. It won't be just our area. Our country will be upside down. Yeah. And I'm not sure how it recovers from that. So this is something that's very important that we need to do in a safe manner, a measured manner, but it has to be done. We have to reopen this economy. People think the government can pay for everything. The government gets their money from taxes that people pay when they get out and have commerce. And if we don't have commerce, the government has no money. Right. And so it's every man for himself at that point. So we can't afford to go down that path. No,
it's a dangerous path. We do have a question. GISD expects to get 1.5 million ESSER funds under the CARES Act. Will this be paid? If so, does the state plan to reduce other state funds we expect to receive from the state?
Well, ESSER, I'm looking up, I've actually got the name of that. I've lost it. Here we go. It's on this page. Well, we're not planning on, if I can't find it, but we're not planning on reducing the funding based on federal. Some of that money can actually, here we are, ESSER is allowed to supplant state funding. Now, we may need to do that to keep our, remember the number one goal is to make sure they don't have a hardship.
That's right.
So if we have enough money in federal dollars, it does free up state dollars to help pay for some other hardships we have, we may do that. But trying to preserve education funding. Remember, we made a huge commitment last session on House Bill 3. So we're taking, I've heard from the governor, lieutenant governor, and the speaker, and they're all intent on making sure we maintain what we did in House Bill 3. That's a number one priority. So however the money is spent, you know, whether ESSER supplants some education money the state is going to spend there, we're going to make sure, whether it's with federal dollars or without, we're doing everything we can to make sure we maintain that funding for education. That is our number one goal, to make sure we do that. And we've got a lot of commitment on behalf of that. And I'm not sure the feds are even done on that as far as funding. I think we may still get some more money from them on that.
Do you keep sending questions? Thank you. Do you see, and I know you don't, this is a difficult question, but do you see us returning 100% within the next month or so? We're talking about April 15th as a, no.
Oh, you mean as far as the opening it all up to phase 3 and 4?
Yeah, just businesses being able to open at 100% if things keep going like they are now.
I've got a governor's call, I think, tomorrow or today. Today, let me look at my calendar real quick.
Okay.
This is where I live by, is my calendar.
I know, me too.
Yeah, Governor Abbott has a press conference at 1. So we'll probably be hearing about the next phase. But what I was shaking my head at is, even if we're open 100%, I don't think people will be out 100%. We're still having to build confidence in people. So it's encouraging, and I'm seeing a lot of places doing well. I mean, I see a lot of restaurants open, and they're practicing social distancing. There's a lot of cars in the parking lot.
Yeah.
I went to Sonic last night, and I couldn't even get a parking spot. So people are getting back out, and that's encouraging. But we've got to get everybody back engaged. Almost everybody. We certainly got to watch out for the most at risk.
So we should know something from the governor soon.
Yeah, that's at 1 o'clock today. I've got a press conference right after this. My next call.
Okay, next question, and then we'll let you go. We know you've got a lot going on. Same question. This is from our friend Tony Brown, by the way. You know Tony.
Oh, yeah.
Elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund.
Yeah, I found it. Yeah, and that's what we were talking about. They've given us, they gave us $1.3 billion to TEA. 90% of that is going to go directly to schools.
Yeah.
So that's substantial. You already had the $100 million for the ESSA. Every Student Succeeds Act that was coming in already. So we've got money coming in. Like I said, I can't give you a budget number. People ask me, like, how this is going to be, what we're going to do. I can't tell you. We won't know that till probably closer to, getting close to January 2021. But I'll just tell you, our commitment is to maintain what we've done in House Bill 3, which was monumental and has to be done. It's we were approaching crisis educational opportunities for some of our students. We've got to get that job done, particularly those low-income students.
I wanted to tell you too, hopefully you're able to look at the chat, and everyone.
Yeah, I'm seeing it.
We appreciate you, Senator. And we've got, please tell us about the 1 million doses available for treatment through the State Pharmacy Board for the early treatment of COVID-19, the 5-day treatment that has saved many lives. Are you reading that too?
Yeah, that was one of my colleagues in the Senate, Brian Hughes, had a contact with someone who had that, and they donated those 1 million doses to Texas. It has to be done. Kathy probably knows more about it than I do. It has to be done through a particular group. So it's not like just everybody, but there's 1 million doses out there. Can you type in the rest of that, Kathy, and tell us what the rest of it was?
We need more information.
Yeah, because like I say, that's not the area I work in health stuff particularly, but I know they got 1 million doses donated to Texas, and I'm trying to remember what the criteria was. It wasn't for everybody. She's not responding.
And Tony said, thanks so much for all you do to continue,
And I must say, Kathy called me early on, her and her husband both, on this hydroxychloroquine, and with the zinc.
Yes.
And, Dr. Armstrong, as we all know, right here in Galveston County. I mean, I keep hearing people say, it's scary, it's a dangerous drug. I just don't see that. The places they've used it, other countries have used it, and it's had pretty good results. I mean, what they did in Texas City with Dr. Armstrong was amazing. I think they had like 39 people that had it. And you see that in most nursing homes, that death rate is so much higher. So, but the key is, from what I understand, is you've got to do it earlier, not wait till they're on their, the ventilator and on the, the closing minutes. It doesn't work like that. It's got to be, brought in earlier.
Dr. Robert Armstrong can guide anyone who needs treatment and guidance. It's very successful in France.
Well, it also kills, like I say, I'm not a medical person, so I'm getting out on a ledge here, but people talk about how scary this drug is and how dangerous it is, and I hear people have been using it for 50, 60 years. I've heard people who run like lupus clinics and those types of things have been using it forever. And I may have said it may not be lupus, whatever the condition is, I'm sorry, but and they just don't have heart issues. They're not giving EKGs to patients before they give them that. And they've been doing this for years for thousands and thousands of people. This is not like it's an untested drug. I mean, we're worried about side effects. We already know what the side effects are of this. And, we already have the right to try, for people that if they're afraid of dying of this and they've gotten it, they should be able to have that opportunity.
Well, thank you so much. We've enjoyed our time with you. I always say you're just one of the greatest men that I know, a good man, and I just appreciate all that you do. I know what's keeping me. I was going to ask you what's keeping you up at night, but I'm pretty certain I know what the answer is. But it's not those babies. That's good stuff, huh?
It's worth staying up with them.
And God bless you for all that you do, and Carrie, all that she's doing for human trafficking and in your family. God bless you. God bless Texas, and God bless America. And I hope we wake up to some better days. 2020's just not started off well with the annual meeting, and then we just kind of went downhill. But
Friendswood ISD's slogan for this year was out of the blue into the new. I don't think they had any idea what it was going to be.
Oh God!
Unbelievable.
Well, let us know how we can help.
Well, thank you, Gina. I appreciate you and your chamber and all that you do, and your chamber members. Let's hang in there. We're going to get through this together. We're going to get through this, and we're Texans. That's what we do. I appreciate you. God bless you. And let's keep moving forward.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for attending today.